Now, Fox News continues its misinformation on welfare foods and food stamps by, of course, surprisingly tying in medical marijuana. This is sort of a new one. Now, it's no surprise that pundits on Fox News enjoy equivocating welfare use with drug abuse. But what is surprising, should be a surprise, is that this kind of poor bashing has actually led to lawmakers introducing legislation to eliminate a problem that actually never really even existed in the first place. That's just what Republican Representative Paul Gosar of Arizona did. Gosar was so incensed from reports aired on a local news station that was, of course, later rebroadcast on Fox News, that food stamp recipients had allegedly withdrawn cash benefits from legal medical marijuana shops in Colorado using their EBT cards. Uh-oh. Looks like we've got a little bit of a problem. While the local affiliate found no evidence that this cash had actually been used to buy weed, Fox News not only reported, but assumed that without facts, that indeed these welfare bums were buying pot with their quote-unquote entitlements because, hey, that's what poor people on welfare do. Sit around and smoke pot. Everybody knows it. Now, Gosar's bill would make it illegal to use SNAP benefits or TANF, otherwise known as welfare benefits, from buying legal marijuana. Now, I want to set the record straight here by informing the congressman and our audience that such things are already incredibly illegal. Okay? SNAP recipients may only purchase approved food items with their benefits and are prohibited from buying alcohol, tobacco, and non-food items. You cannot and never have been able to buy weed with food stamps. It cannot be done. SNAP benefits can also not be withdrawn as cash. You cannot turn your food stamps into money. It doesn't work that way. So now with that said, I want to turn to my panel and ask you guys what your thoughts are on this bill and the idea that people being on welfare are obviously all into drugs. Steve.
Well, I mean, like my first 2 points. So, firstly, they could technically kind of use the food stamps to buy food and produce, and then sell those produce for money, and then use that money to go and buy weed. But that's not going to happen anyway. But what annoys me about this story is that, I mean, there's many things that annoy me about it. But the main thing is they're so inconsistent about it. Like, why have they just decided to pick weed? It's basically it's a relatively hot topic at the moment. You know, there's more and more states legalizing it, more and more people are in favor of legalizing it, both recreationally and medicinally. But you know, why not just pick on alcohol? Why not pick on tobacco? It's because they know in their audience mindsets that kind of their audience already knows. Well, of course you can't buy alcohol and stuff with it, but they could probably buy weed with it. So let's pick that one. And it's just that if they decide to run a story saying, oh, they can buy alcohol, they can buy weed, they can buy prescription drugs that they can OD on, then fine, at least there'd be some level of consistency in their lying. But they just decide to kind of target this one drug. It's really a non-drug. It's, we all see in the studies less harmful than alcohol in, a number of different aspects. And it is just because it's a hot topic though, and they know they're losing the culture war on this. They must have read the statistics. So Fox News is just trying to cling on to that core base audience by using these sort of stories.
All right, Sean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if somebody wanted to turn food stamps into money, then they could. Like, we've heard about those like little scams, and I say little because as a percentage of the program, it's like 1.2% of people using it, where you'll go to a store and not buy, and you'll spend $250 worth of SNAP benefits, and you get $200 back in cash from the store owner, right? So like, if you're gonna want to buy it, like use your food stamp money to buy something else, like there are ways around it. That being said, one of those ways is not withdrawing money out of an ATM, like your food stamp card is a debit card, and doing so at a marijuana dispensary and then buying weed right there, like that. Like, sometimes when you hear a story that sounds really, really false, it's probably because it is. I think that Fox News should probably have double checked that. As for the congressman and the like proposing bills and all that to prevent this, like technically the bill would do nothing because the problem doesn't exist, but it's just more it's what we're going to see a lot of. We're going to see a lot of marijuana hysteria and a lot of these stories coming out. So I'm not sure if this is a pot story or a SNAP story or a welfare story, but I'm probably going to vote pot story because we're just going to keep seeing these, like, oh, look at these stoners. Like, just wait for the one guy to have like a pound of marijuana who murdered his girlfriend in his house in like Colorado or Washington, and that's going to be like national news. Like, we're going to have the media making a lot of something out of pretty much nothing in this country for the next couple of years. So get used to it. This is just one of them.
Yeah, it's just one of those giant wastes of time when it comes to legislation. Like, do you have nothing better to do than to solve a problem that doesn't exist? Really? And going back to what you were talking about, Sean, yeah, that what you explained with people doing with food stamps and everything like that, that is a scam and that is illegal. But that's not exactly what Fox News was actually saying. They're saying that in Obama's America, you can swipe your food stamp card and get your pot so you can sit on the couch and not look for a job. At least that's the sense that I get whenever they do these kinds of stories. And it's incredibly, I mean, it's a lie. That's straight out, flat out. It's completely dishonest. Stephen, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I mean, just, on the dishonesty part, is that it's not, I mean, we all know it's not journalism. They just create these stories so that laws and legislation will be passed, and then there'll be a furore about the legislation, from, people on the left and progressives and Democrats saying it's outrageous that they're trying to pass this bill when they're so wrong. And then Fox News then go, oh, look at the kind of the liberals trying to make sure that people on food stamps can, buy drugs. And then they just create a whole story. Like, they produce this one story that then kind of branches out into an umbrella of a whole, like, smorgasbord of different stories that they can then, I mean, it's a 24-hour news network. They've got to talk about something. And so they just create these stories to do that.
Right. And it's really ingenious when you think about it, because you create the story, then you get a dumb congressman or state legislator to propose a bill, and then you're like, if this problem doesn't exist, why is there a bill in Arizona? Why is there a bill in this state? So it ends up becoming like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something. Not even that. It's kind of like it just grows. It just keeps growing off of the original lie, and then nobody even looks at the original lie. It's like if somebody spreads a rumor on Twitter and it gets picked up by a bunch of blogs, and then all the blogs are citing the blogs, citing each other, and it turns out the original tweet was bullshit.
It's a perpetual motion machine. I mean, when I was doing my master's degree, it was mainly focused on Twitter, and one of the articles that I wrote was about when we had the riots here in London. There was a story that broke out on Twitter that writers had gone into London Zoo and released all the animals into London, and it was a completely made up lie, but it spread on Twitter and it was tracked on Twitter. It was like one of these kind of stories that academia focused on, and Twitter started to recorrect itself because people on Twitter said no, this was wrong. And so those sort of rumors, they do correct themselves over time on the internet, but the problem is once it started, that's all that Fox News and places like Breitbart and so on, that's all they need. As long as it started, they don't care about the end product and what the actual end of the story is. They just care about the initial start of the story and the lie.
Yeah, and Sean, what you were talking about earlier about that whole thing, I mean, you have to remember that the Fox News audience is still reefer madness age, essentially. Their average age of a Fox News viewer is like 72 or something like that. So they're incredibly old, and they, sort of fell for that whole drug war propaganda.
And we see from the polls that the most distrusted and the most trusted name in news is actually Fox, because the people who know it's full of crap know it's full of crap, but the people who are like diehard viewers of it think every other media source is terrible and they stick to it. So they're of that age, and Fox is feeding them what they want to hear. So, and they have trust for them because they they've heard about how all the other media are scammers and all that. So they end up, like, if it's on Fox, it's like gospel to them, and it ends up being like confirmation bias. Like, I already don't like welfare people. I already don't like people who smoke pot, and now welfare people are using their welfare to smoke pot. I knew it. Like, it's just it's just one, like, all you need is a bad story. Like, it's we saw something like similar to this with CNN, and it's actually more similar to this example that Steven gave, where they some guy tweeted at CNN that the Wall Street Exchange had flooded during Hurricane Sandy, and CNN ran with it on the air, and then people started reporting off of what CNN was reporting, and then it snowballed like that. So it's really a bad look at our media here.
Oh, that kind of reminds me, that whole story about, the New York Stock Exchange flooding and not being true. It reminds me of an article I saw on a satire site that actually tricked a lot of the mainstream, a lot of the local news, not just local, but a lot of online news networks picked up this story that Hickenlooper was actually going to let everybody out of jail and expunge their records of everybody who had ever been convicted of a drug offense or a pot offense in Colorado, and that turned out to be complete utter bullshit. But it got spread around to all the different media sites, and even the Young Turks fell for it for a little while.
Yeah, it's the problem with the internet, that it's brilliant for journalism in so many ways. My master's degree is entitled Journalism and New Media. So, the internet is the way forward for journalism, and the problem is that you now have citizen journalism, which is where anyone can be considered a journalist or a blogger and so on and so forth.
Like us.
Well, yeah, exactly. I don't class myself technically as a journalist. I'm more of an academic. But the fact is that somebody can tweet something, and a news source, or problem is a small website can just see one person's tweet about, oh, I heard, gunshots fired or my neighbor was just murdered. Then that tweet can be seen by some friends. Those friends can retweet it. One of those friends may run their own blog site, and then it gets picked up and it goes up the chain of media without any form of verification. And because of the nature of the news being so quick, because of the internet, it's instant, it has to happen straight away. There's no time to stop, and think and verify and, fact check and make sure things are correct. They've got to report instantly. Another classic example is the Boston marathon bombings, where CNN just like, yeah, they've got somebody in custody, he's already been arrested, we know who he is, and then, half hour later, John King's like, yeah, my bad, no one's been arrested, we just got told off by the police or whatever, saying, yeah, nothing's happened. But especially with the cable news channels, because it's 24/7, they have to fill the time with something, and that's the issue. With the BBC, and you have BBC over in America as well, but they have such a vast network of bureaus that they are able to report on stuff from around the world, and they are able to keep it, relatively unbiased and on track, and they don't have to instantly report stuff. Whereas, CNN and Fox and MSNBC, because they don't have that network and that capability, that infrastructure, they feel like, well, we can't compete with, the BBC or the AP on, that side of journalism, so we're going to try and be first. And as long as we're first, that's all that matters. And that's the case not just even with cable news these days, but with most news websites. You've got to break it first, because otherwise someone else will break it. And okay, if they get a tiny bit wrong, people aren't going to care about that. They just want to go to the website that broke it first.
Right, and going back to Fox News, I don't think they really care about fact-checking. So, it's sort of a win if you're Fox News. You get to be first, and you don't have to worry about fact-checking, because pretty much everything you put out is utter bullshit anyway.
It's a win-win situation.
It's a total win-win
whatever
situation.
They want, whenever they want, and they can just make it up, because no one, as you said, because they're the most trusted and untrusted. People who watch them religiously, they don't care, they just accept it. They're not going to go and fact-check themselves. And the people who don't watch it, well, Fox News doesn't care about them. They can't lose. The only thing that they're losing is just their audience by dying off. That's their only problem.
I do have one thing, well, like about getting it first, getting the story first. That's not really a new thing. I mean, because there was a time when getting a story first meant that you got the story like a week before everybody else got the story. You know what I mean? Like by the time another newspaper could research and and verify and all that, it would be like a long time later. Like so, getting the story first is like this weird like thing that doesn't matter anymore to anybody except for people in the media because that's like a old media type of thing.
Yeah, right. That precedent was started like back when we had literally three TV stations, all competing. And so if CBS got it first, NBC and ABC would be over there sitting over their butt hurt, and going, damn it, I wish I'd got that first. But it doesn't matter anymore.
It began before that. It was with the newspapers, the penny press back in like the 1820s and stuff. Is that if you got a scoop, you'd break a story, kind of a week before, and then when there was kind of printing technology improved, you'd get the story the day before, and all the other newspapers end up playing catch up. But with the internet, it's not kind of the day before or the hour before. It's now literally down to minutes. And places like CNN and Fox and, to be honest, even the BBC, when it comes to breaking news on Twitter, they're easily kind of 5-10 minutes behind. And with the BBC, I think it's kind of generally the case that they try to verify something before they break it, so they are always a bit behind the curve. But at least they know that they've got that trusted sense that people have about them. But they're always, the celebrity dies, you see it from another celebrity tweeting it first before you do from any news organization. And these news companies, they haven't realized that they simply can't compete. They've got to try and compete on quality now, rather than quantity or speed.
They're trying to like outcompete TMZ, like the TMZ where they get tips and all that stuff sent in by their viewers, and which they pay for, which kind of is very shady,
unethical. Yeah.
But the thing is it's TV they do have to go for quality better than like more than speed, because like unless it's like a live event where like CNN, and we know CNN goes up during like disasters or uprisings or whatever, where CNN has people there and you're getting like video, like high quality video.
They're the best, yeah.
Yeah, there's no reason to watch CNN because like by the time they load the story into the prompter and all that and they put it on air and all that, like you've already heard about it on the internet. So the only thing they can do is try and up the quality, but they have no interest in that. They just want to get it first because they think that's their issue. But you're never going to beat the internet. A guy on Twitter is the one who told us about Bin Laden, his like Pakistani neighbor, if you guys remember.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's just never gonna happen. Like they need to like get rid of that. They might be able to. They won't even break it on Twitter with their Twitter accounts because they have to get the news tweeted to them. Like
it's impossible for them to be first. I mean, one of the paragraphs that I have in my thesis at the moment is that it's impossible for any news organization to have a journalist on every single street corner, and therefore they have to rely, on the public and on technology, people using that technology to get them the story. And in fact, just going back to the point about kind of it being unethical for TMZ to, pay for stories and stuff, we recently had, it's still ongoing, the whole phone hacking trial, with News of the World, and Rebecca Brooks, who was the editor at the time, like she's just admitted, oh yeah, they paid police officers for stories and inside scoops, and then said, but it was in the public interest, so we had to. And it's like, well, no, I mean, some cases it was kind of in the public interest, but I mean, all journalists kind of would, I reckon, when push comes to shove, they would be willing, depending on the story, to pay for it. But I mean, it's not necessarily just the TMZs of the world that are doing it. It's genuine news organizations, and I bet anything. I'm not a betting man, so I'm not going to bet £1 million on it, dollars. But Fox News, they've paid for stories. I mean, I suppose one could make the argument that.
I don't know. Once again, I think I could see Fox News being sort of a win-win on this, and actually
they don't have to pay.
Not having to pay for anything because they can make shit up, and they consistently do. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too hard on Fox News. if
And
there
really,
is such a thing.
really, I think TV, they might pay for interviews more than like that exclusive interview. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
saying
That's
it was the George Zimmerman interview, but like an interview like that would be one that a TV station would pay for. But like as for like, I think print or online is more likely to pay for like a video or something. Although video would make sense too, if it's not already on the internet.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
mean that was the case with the Zapruder film of the JFK assassination. Like all the networks were kind of bidding to see who would get the rights to, show it first.
I would be scared of that if I had that film, because all that Kennedy conspiracies and one guy's, I always felt like one person's gonna pay for it, put it in a vault, and shoot me in the head if I had that Kennedy film.
Speaking, of course, of conspiracies, do you guys think that Fox News, I mean, continues to push phony conspiracies and scandals like, I don't know, the IRS and a Benghazi cover-up and things like that? And,
The
if
the
you
one
think that,
thing
do you think that
the one
has
thing
also caused, like, people like Daryl Issa to sit there and waste taxpayer money on stupid investigations?
Well, the one thing I'll say about the IRS scandal is the IRS woman keeps taking the Fifth Amendment for some reason, right? And she has every right to, right? But she is taking the Fifth Amendment, and in my opinion, Issa was right to freak out when what she did in that hearing was break the law. She said that she was innocent on all charges, and then she was taking the Fifth, and he demanded that she had to expunge her first statement from the record, because you can't take the Fifth and say you're not guilty. You're just taking the Fifth. You can't say anything. You can't release a statement. That's just not how it works. So that to me was fine. Like whether they should have had the hearing or not in the first place is a different story.
All right. One more thing from you, Stephen, and then we'll wrap up the segment and go on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, with the IRS scandal, it's kind of going back to what Sean said about kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy that, if Fox News talks about it, then it means politicians feel, oh, we need to try and deal with this. Then they try and deal with it. That creates more of a story for Fox News to talk about. And it just goes round and round in circles just to simply fill up airtime. Because that's what they're doing. Their producers are just in a constant panic of how are we going to fill the next hour, or how are we going to, what's the narrative going to be for the day or the week? What are we going to talk about? That's all they're worried about. So they have to try and create these kind of whirlwind stories to fill up that time.
All right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, Fox News tends to, take stories and either make up things about them or embellish them in order to push a narrative, and in order to take some sort of action to come back to a point that was made earlier in order to kind of play the politics against the Democrats. Because remember, for this whole weed thing, Democrats came up and said, well, hey, wait a minute, that's ridiculous. Why are you blocking ATMs or whatever, people from using ATMs in pot shops? That's ridiculous. What if that's the only ATM you have in your area in order to use? And stuff like that. And, of course, the Republicans come back later and say, look at that. You want those food stamps to buy pot. America, thanks, Obama.
I mean that's a good point. Like if the only ATM near you, like the way I think of it is the only ATM near you is the liquor store on the corner, like where else are you supposed to go? So actually, I think that's a good point by the Democrats.
Hey, if you enjoyed this clip, make sure to like and leave a comment below, or even share. Sharing is caring. If you want to see more TYT Nation videos, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TYT Nation. Thank you for watching.